Closer to going a couple $1 trillion more into debt. A bill's on its way to the White House right now that would raise the debt ceiling to $14.3 trillion. Now that's about $6,000 more for every U.S. resident, to put it in a different perspective. And joining us now from New York to talk about it is Gerald Celente from the Trends Research Institute. Mr. Celente, do we have Mr. Celente?
Yes, you do.
Great. Well, Congress, they say they need this money to pay for Social Security and for Medicare, and raising the debt ceiling really has become a yearly tradition. So where do you think it's leading us? Is this okay, or is this a bad thing?
Well, it's just more of the same. Let's look at the real numbers. When you look at what the debt is already, and now with this raised debt ceiling, you're talking roughly $40,000 each American is in debt. It's never going to be paid off. It's a joke. And so they're just going to keep raising it and raising it. And at the same time, they're destroying the economy and destroying the foundation of the nation. It'll never be paid off. Just look at the numbers.
Okay, you said destroying the economy, but it was just announced today the jobless rate dropped to 9.7% from double digits. So maybe what the U.S. is doing is working. Maybe the economy is improving.
It's less worse. It's not more better. So when you're looking, what did they add? About another 800,000 people to the unemployment rolls since the Great Recession began. They have to create 1.5 million jobs a year just to stay even with population growth. That doesn't include all the small businesses, all the entrepreneurs whose businesses are off 30, 40, 50%. That doesn't go into the unemployment. It doesn't include all of those students that got out of school years ago with their degrees in industrial relations and foreign affairs and art history and MBAs that don't have jobs. No, it's not getting better. Remember, this is only a stimulus cover-up. Look what's going on with the stock markets around the world. China reeled in its excess spending and easy lending, and the markets are collapsing worldwide. The crash of 2010, as we predicted, has begun.
Well, couldn't you argue there's concerns in international markets over concerns that some countries will default on their obligations? Couldn't you argue that if the U.S. didn't raise the debt ceiling and began to entertain defaulting on any of their obligations, it would create more of a crisis like you're talking about?
Well, let's look at what the crisis in Europe is about. You have countries like Greece and Portugal and Ireland and Spain that have budget deficits far beyond the 3% GDP that they're recommending under the European Monetary Union. So what's Greece's, about 12.9% of the GDP, their budget deficit? Hey, try this one on. How about 10.6% in the United States? That's what the budget deficit is to the GDP. So they're right in the same league as these sovereign nations that everyone's worrying about defaulting. Look, when all else fails, the United States is going to do what they've done before, and many nations before and after will do. They take the nation to war. They get their people's minds off these problems. So we don't see this problem being solved economically. Unfortunately, war is on the horizon in some way or another.
Well, what about solving it economically? Does the U.S. need to start looking at new ways of generating revenue? I mean, what about the VAT tax? That's more popular than sales tax throughout most of the rest of the world. What about looking at that kind of a thing?
It's a more tax. No, how about a productive capacity? Look, we have 300 million people in this country. You don't have to do business with other countries with slave labor. How about having it made in America, buying local? So there's enough trading to go on in this country where we have the natural resources, the wherewithal and the innovation to make it happen. But they're shipping everything overseas, and we don't have a productive capacity. So in the absence of a productive capacity, where are you going to get the tax money from? The people who are already overtaxed, going under, losing their homes. Real wages, what, in 2009? Oh, it only declined, what, 1.6%? So how are you going to tax people more?
Well, thanks so much, Mr. Celente, weighing in on what the government should do instead of raising the debt ceiling, trillions more dollars.